And we are back. We made it to episode 2. And this,
Yeah.
I feel like, do you remember in the 80s, the sitcoms, they'd have a very special episode and something?
Yes.
This is a very special episode because this is coming out on my birthday. So this
Today's
is
your birthday. Oh, when it comes out.
today in like the weird podcast world. Today,
That's
when
right.
you're hearing this, is my
When
birthday.
you're hearing this. Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you.
That's amazing. Does that make you a Scorpio?
Yes.
Okay. Scorpios are powerful. It's
Yeah.
awesome.
I'm a double Scorpio, if you follow astrology, and my daughter is a double Scorpio. So
That's a whole show by itself.
our suns and our rising are both Scorpios.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so doubly powerful. That's what I'm going to say. I know
Yeah.
nothing about it.
It's an intense household.
Well, okay. As long as you know it, you can navigate it.
We know it.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Okay. So we wanted to start with just kind of like a little bit of news of the week. And I think the biggest thing, just like from a platform perspective and stuff going on that we've seen over the last week or so, has been Instagram just continuing to put so much of a stress and just, I can't think of the word, but really hyping up carousels, which are the photo carousels. You can include videos as well. A few weeks ago, they announced that you could have up to 20 items in there, which is a lot.
Yeah.
I get excited personally because I feel like that's so great for vacation, like a little vacation album type of a thing.
Yep.
But it's great for brands too.
Yeah.
But the big thing that they announced, which I saw in Leah Haberman's In Case You Missed It newsletter, which I'm sure listeners of this podcast are very familiar with because she co-hosted with me last season. But she was saying that what's really cool is Instagram is now taking, if you put music along with your carousel, Instagram will put it in the Reels feed, which is really, or the Reels tab, which has really become the primary tab these days of Instagram. So
yeah.
I always look at everything through the lens of clients and how do we make this work for our clients.
Right.
And I think it's very exciting. I love carousels.
As a consumer, I have to say, I'll admit, when I look at Instagram and I see the little dots, like, ooh, there's more there. And like, what else can I? So I'm it's me. And I want to ask you this. I feel like I also saw something about Instagram will repopulate this carousel if it doesn't maybe get a lot of love the first time around.
The thing that we have seen, which I think is great, especially if you have a piece of content that you want to get eyeballs on, which certainly is clients. If you see, if you look at just one of the images and then scroll past and don't see those little dots and scroll through all of them, Instagram will keep showing that carousel to you, but they'll show you different starting images. So and if you're adding 20, that's like 20 opportunities for that one chunk of content to be seen by someone. So it's really smart.
I was going to say, not a mistake or not unintentional on Instagram's part to reward people for using the full bandwidth of all 20 images.
Right.
They want them in there.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, again, I think it's about consumer interaction with it. It's about what satisfies the itch as we're looking through, scrolling through. I was going to ask you about this change. How do you feel like that impacts the deals you're putting together on the influencer side?
I think it opens up deals to more people and maybe people who have been doing this a longer time. I can explain. I forget who I was talking to. I was talking to someone who has been in the space a long time, like I have. And we were talking about the fact that back when this all started, we weren't all great at video. And we were great at, I was talking to Jill Smokler, the founder of Scary Mommy.
Okay.
And we were talking about the fact that like we weren't performers in front of video and our kids weren't performers and we were just telling stories. And then I always look at stuff through, and I'm sure you do too, through the lens of food blogging. And I mean, I have to say, looking at my old food photos, they're hideous, but certainly I think a lot of older school food influencers were better at that still photography, and to
Mhm.
suddenly be having to do, then it kind of moved on to hands and pans, which are, where you just see the hands making a dish, and that's
Mhm.
still popular. But now what a lot of our clients want is people talking to camera, showing the recipe, almost
Mhm.
doing like this fun little mini Food Network TV show,
Right.
which not everyone can. That's really hard
It
to
is.
do. And you need a
Yep.
whole crazy setup. You need to be totally skilled. That
Mhm.
takes a ton of editing. And so I think one, it's great for influencers because if you are better at still photography but still have wonderful recipes to share, it opens things back up for you where you might not
Mhm.
have been getting as many opportunities as things were moving more towards video. And
Mhm.
then I think I'm seeing from our clients, they are really happy. A lot of our food clients ask for half the content to be video and half to be photo carousels because they want images for their website, and
Mhm.
there's still a need for that beautiful, gorgeous food content.
Mhm.
And actually, it's not even just our Ergo Baby client, which is parenting and like cute baby stuff. They like to get those photos in too. They don't.
Yep.
Videos are terrific, but it's nice to have still images.
Right. And I think maybe you answered this question, but I feel like I've seen carousels that have both a
Yeah.
still photo and then the video is the next one. So then you can kind of increase the intrigue factor too. Like, what else am I? It's like a treasure hunt. What else am I going to see in this carousel?
And I think, and just to give you a sneak peek, we always publish 2025 predictions in Forbes,
Mm.
and that has not yet come out. It won't come out for another month or so. But one of them is all about curation, and that curation is just going to be huge in 2025. And
Mhm.
think about all the avenues that a 20, I guess I would say 20 slides, if some of them can be video and some, I don't know what the proper terminology is, but
Mhm.
what a great way to do curation. And if you're doing sponsor content, not every slide of that carousel has to be about that one product. It could be like taking the Ergo Baby example. It could be, here are the 20 things that every new mom has to have on her registry, or here are the 20 things you have to
Right.
bring with you to the hospital when you're going to have your baby. Or,
I love that. Yep.
you could have the brand could, if you're doing a food program with 20 different influencers, the brand could showcase all of those different recipes
Right.
in there.
I would predict that this would mean brands who may have hesitated. I don't know who's left that's hesitating to do influencer marketing, but this now opens the door for them as well to not feel like um, it's almost like social media and influencer marketing is fueled by FOMO, fear of missing out. And suddenly this stopped that progression you were just talking about, where it kept galloping from still to video to on screen to now ad hoc um, TikTok style. It seems to be taking a well needed step back to tap into what has always worked and what is more familiar or accessible to most marketers or influencers so
Yeah.
that there's more choice.
Right. And there's more choice from the perspective of the consumer, and there's more choice from creators because they don't have to feel like they can't participate in this if they can't do a TikTok style
Right.
video.
Yes. Sort of related to that, I've been having conversations, and I don't know if we touched on this last week. I don't think we did, about NIL and that opportunity now.
Yeah.
NIL is name, image, likeness.
Right.
It is not video ambassador, spokesperson necessarily. It is somebody's picture on a billboard or a pamphlet at the bank. And I feel like there's something in here too that's going to alleviate some of the challenges for brands that want to work with student athletes. When the student athletes are great at what they do in their academic and athletic lives, but they're not content creators, they're not good at video, because I've heard of talent managers having to send videographers and photographers out to help with the content creation
Yeah.
because it's just not a natural thing. But again, if we're not looking for everything to be a TikTok style video, and now there's a day in the life of a student athlete and it's 20 photos, might be an easier ask or not require a professional camera, photographer, styler on set.
Yeah, NIL is really, I think it's tricky. You and I both have college age kids. Managing college age kids as a parent or as a boss type
Full stop.
situation is
Yeah.
tough. It's
Yep.
tough. They have a lot going on, like frontal lobe's not fully developed. Like there's multiple issues there.
Right. Yep.
And when so even any college age campaigns that we do are always tricky, and we always kind of bundle in some more time for the back and forth and the hand
Mm.
holding and the missed deadlines and everything that comes along with it. And
Mhm.
when you add in NIL, so you're adding in a kid who, on top of all the schoolwork, is also doing all the sports
Mhm.
stuff and has
Training.
so much that they're
Yep.
juggling, it's even harder.
Mhm. Right. And we can't assume that just because a person is of a certain age bracket or demographic, that they're naturally inclined toward creating a winning hook or video or, it's which is good news for us as
Yeah.
influencer marketing experts, because that's where the curation on our side comes in, is
Yeah.
finding the right people. Not to put a pitch in for that, but I often look at my own college age kids and I've said to them, hey, there's this spokesperson. Who was it? I feel like it was New England or Pennsylvania Dairy was doing an ambassadorship internship over the summer, this past summer. And all the person had to do was go to all these ice cream, like creameries, and
Uh-huh.
sample ice cream. And I said to my daughter, get on that. You love ice cream and you're digitally native. And it was not a sure thing. It was not like an easy yes from her. She didn't want anything to do with it.
Yeah.
Different story, but it's just not as easy to create content, I think, as most people, as the really adept creators and influencers make it look sometimes.
Yeah. Fun
So,
fact, I was just talking about that campaign with one of my clients because she's with a different dairy association, and that was so successful, that program.
oh,
That it was
great.
the Northeast Dairy, and it was the chief ice cream officer that they were searching
Yes,
for. And these two best friends won, and then they
oh,
went on this whole ice cream tour of the whole Northeast,
that great
which
idea.
is super fun.
It's a great. I think I wanted to live vicariously through my daughter, which is why I was pushing her in that direction. But yeah, brilliant idea. Really fun use of the platform, the tactics, the demographic, the possibilities. So I'm glad it turned out well.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
good to know.
they're all the other dairy associations, I think, are very jealous that they came up with that idea first.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So maybe we'll see more ice cream tours on the horizon.
Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe. Okay, so last week we teased a big topic for this week, and this is such a juicy conversation that you and I have kind of jumped into a little bit on and off on LinkedIn. It's a little shark
Yeah.
infested waters there, so no one's gonna yell at us here.
Mm.
The question is, what is there value, and if so, what is the value of talent agents and talent managers, which are actually two separate things, but they are totally muddled in the influencer space.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the value of a talent? We'll just use the word manager for now to keep it simple.
Sure.
Um, in the influencer world, because everything from our perspective and from a lot of other folks I've talked to who are trying to hire influencers, they sure do seem like an unnecessary bottleneck that makes my job so much harder. Can you
Mm-hmm.
please go away?
Mm-hmm.
There are some exceptions. There are some lovely people out there, and they who know who they are, uh, because we
Right. We
call
will
them all the
be
time.
checking in with you later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But man, alive.
Yes. I was thinking about this topic over the last week or so as we were planning to talk about it today. And I remember the days of working with bloggers and suddenly out of nowhere having a manager write back to us and thinking, what fresh hell is this? Like, what are you kidding? And, and, right or wrong, feeling a little bit like put out,
Hmm.
not, not, not for any other reason than the layer that it put in between us and the
Because
influencers
often
we were
they
trying to
will
work with.
remove the influencer from the email thread. So the influencer is not even
Yep.
seeing
Yep.
what you want, what the intent is, why we
Ye
want to work with them.
Yep, yep. So, I recently wrote about this on LinkedIn, which is one of my best performing, most engaged posts there, because I pitched it in the same way you just asked. What's the value? Or are they just creating friction? And a lot of people responded with defense of talent managers that, yes, we know there are some bad apples out there, but I'm not referring to bad apples. I'm referring to a paradigm, a whole industry. And so interject as because I have a lot to say about this, so I don't want to like monopolize the conversation. If I'm thinking about it from the influencer's point of view, when we saw them start to take on managers, it was to help manage the workload, help manage the details, the communication, maybe negotiate better prices for them. But ultimately, I think the goal would be get a manager in there to help an influencer be able to land more deals and make more money. So, from my point of view, it's not that I think they're not valuable. I just don't think that the contracting entity, the brand or the agency hiring that influencer should be paying a higher price for the influencer to have that support. So I think they're valuable to the influencer,
Yeah.
and it helps the influencer. The point to me would be it helps the influencer streamline, processitize, that's probably not a word, their systems so that they can do more, make more money, and afford the manager. It's a cost center for the influencer, but it has been transferred to us on the contracting side, the brand and agency side that are contracting these influencers. And that's where the rub is.
Well, and I think it's so complicated because there's an influencer we've worked with for years and years and years, and she does amazing work and had a fair rate. And then she got a manager, and the rate, it didn't go up commensurate with what a manager's percentage would be. Her rate tripled. So, I
That's
mean,
just bad advice.
well,
That's just
I believe that she was told that she was undercharging, and maybe
Mm,
slightly. I mean, I think there was probably a little bit of room for her to come up because she's lovely and wonderful to work with, and creates amazing content.
yep.
But tripling is a lot. That's a big
Hmm.
thing, and that I mean, I don't know what percentage this person is taking. I'm assuming it's not 66%
Right.
of the,
Right.
if I did that math right. I'm
Yep.
assuming it's not 66% of the fee.
Yep. So there's a lot of sticker shock there.
Yeah, and it just becomes more difficult to work with that person because you reach out about an opportunity, and there are often times that the manager will come back and say that they're not even going to put it in front of the talent until
Hmm.
XX and whatever conditions are met, whether it's price or exclusivity or usage. Now, at the end of the day, influencer marketing is about authenticity. And if a product is a really great fit and the influencer is using it already and there's a wonderful story to be told,
Hmm.
that has to factor in my idealistic mind
Yeah.
into the negotiate. I mean, not that they should take a dramatically less, like lower fee because
Yeah.
it's a great fit, but that's part of the negotiation.
Yeah. There's a lot that I want to unpack in that because now we're into some business practices that number one, raising your rates, tripling your rates without saying to a current or past client, I'm tripling my rates or acknowledging it and saying, but because we've worked together in the past, here's what I'm going to do for you to ease you into it. So, pro tip for influencers out there when you're raising your rates, find a way to make it less shocking for the current client base or the recent past to keep those relationships in place.
Right.
Because, like you said, that's what's going to matter at the end of the day. Because Danielle and I know many, many people, and we talk amongst ourselves and we like to say nice things about influencers. We like to recommend influencers to each other. Be on that list that,
Right.
wants to get recommended. And then the other piece is if I'm looking at it from the influencer side and they triple their price and then they can reduce how much they're working, I'm also all for that. and the market will bear what the market will bear.
Right.
So if they can make their nut, I say go for it. And to your point, it might be, and we're tapping out because we had this, expectation of what it would be, and we can't triple. We could meet you in the middle.
Well, and
But
not every brand or entity who is paying influencers is trying to scam their creators. We're putting
right.
together a program right now, and we're working with a newer creator who didn't know their value, and they came to us with a price, and we said, you know what, that's low. We're going to go ahead and pay you
Yep.
this, which is higher. I'm
Yep.
sure that there are folks out there who don't do that. So it's nice for there to be some protections in place in the form of management, but
Yeah.
to
Yes.
assume that everyone is just trying to kind of get the best deal possible and scam the
Right.
creators out there, I think is a bit unfair.
It's not right. It's not a great foundation upon which to even start negotiation.
Right.
Yeah.
We've seen some other kooky things. We had a new experience 2 weeks ago where we were, this gets into a conversation that I think we'll probably have next week, which is the celebs versus influencers. But we were
Okay.
negotiating with an agency to use a celeb, kind of like a, let's call them not like a list,
Okay.
C or D list
Okay.
celeb for a program. Um, we had all the back and forth of the negotiation. We agreed to a dollar amount and all the timing and everything. I had not yet moved to contract. Open up Instagram and see her post a sponsored post for a competitive, like the exact same product, but from a competitor,
Oh,
calling
wow.
it one of her favorites. So, had she then moved forward with our client, it would look completely inauthentic.
Mhm.
I mean, we'd get the reach, but it wouldn't be a great story
Nobody
anymore.
wins in that situation.
Here's my other favorite that looks so similar.
Right. Right.
So we went back to the agency and said our client has decided not to move forward. They feel this is no longer an authentic story.
Mm.
And the agent asked us for a kill fee, but we hadn't signed a contract.
Yeah. Yeah. No, my immediate reaction is no, thank you.
Yeah, right.
No, there's no kill fee there. The, how about paying us for our time for negotiating in good faith when that was well in the works?
Right.
That didn't
And I
surprise
think,
anybody.
but doesn't that also get back to what you were saying about where a manager is terrific is if they're providing guidance to
Mhm.
their client on best practices and what to do and how to really build their business.
Mhm.
And assuming the same agent negotiated that deal as well, is that really great? That's not great counsel. That's not great
Right.
advice. That's not managing that
Right.
creator appropriately.
And that's something the influencers and creators need to be on the lookout for,
Right.
that they're not all created equally correct. I would also the place I come out in favor of talent management is that piece, is guiding, nurturing your clients' careers and their ability to franchise out or, create product lines or do appearances, like whatever, however you can grow them. From the brand side, I think the value of talent managers, and here's a pro tip for you managers out there, position yourselves as an emotional barrier between a brand and an influencer. You're going to take the tough news. You're going to take the, hey, this real, they pronounced the name of the brand wrong, to your point from last week, or the label wasn't showing. If we can look at talent management as that kind of buffer and getting the job done so that we don't have to, emotional delays are one of the biggest cost factors, I believe, in brands dealing with influencers directly. They don't want to say the wrong thing. They don't want to
Yeah.
negotiate poorly. They don't want to burn bridges. It puts them in a state of paralysis oftentimes, or they underprice things or they overprice things and things go haywire. And so I once said that to a brand who was really frustrated with the talent management paradigm. I said, can you look at them like they're the buffer and helping you negotiate tricky conversations and difficult situations? And the person literally stopped and just thought, I have never thought of it that way. And that's exactly right. That's what that talent manager was doing,
Yeah,
but not pitching it that way, not being obvious about, hey, wait a minute, look at all the stuff I'm doing. You don't have to see as a brand.
right.
We also know that influencers in general that we're working with are creatives, and creatives are brainstormers and they're ideators, and they're oftentimes not in love with process and details and reading a whole contract. And so a talent manager, it doesn't have to be a talent manager though, which is what you and I have talked about. That can be a
That
VA.
was gonna be my next question is
Yeah.
what advice do you if a creator comes to you and asks if it makes sense for them to get an agent or a manager at this point in time, what advice do you give them? And I think we both give the same advice is that if it's just that there's too much work on your plate, get a virtual assistant.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
don't need to be giving up a percentage of your income to
Right.
someone.
And yes, and if you are going to give up a percentage of your income, factor out how that, why, what that looks like, what the structure is, how many, so that you don't have to triple your rates to
Right.
get it done. I think a lot of influencers and creators, at least back when we started, were kind of fell into it, didn't maybe plan that this was going to be a business option and they'd be quitting their full-time jobs and then hiring their spouses to come work with them, which we see a lot.
Yeah.
So there's a piece of this conversation which maybe would move into leadership training or business acumen for influencers and creators, aside from hiring somebody, but taking like, I'm going to give a free plug to the Colby A assessment. It's one of my favorite tools for understanding how
Spell
my
it for
team.
everyone because I know it's spelled funky.
Oh, Colby is Kolb, and it's the Colby A. They have a slew of assessments that help you understand your team. And if you're trying to, this is such an ad for them. But so I won't go into that. But if an influencer or creator can take something like that, or a strengths finder, or maybe the disc, maybe the Myers-Briggs, I'm not as familiar with those, you might start to understand it's not that I'm lazy. It's not that I'm too creative. It's not that I don't have enough time. It's that I don't like processes. I don't like being rigid and routine and structured. I don't like details. I don't like fact finding. So just get somebody at a VA rate that can fill those gaps for you. And then I would say start to raise your rates little by little and see what the market will bear. And then you'll know what you can afford if you need to bring on a talent manager.
Right.
But I don't think there's, I think cart horse conversation, it feels good to have a talent manager. And I think talent managers, plug your ears if you're listening, I think they probably tell a good story, right? They
Yeah.
pitch a good story to the influencers, like, here's what we're going to do for you. And we're going to make it so easy. And that sounds good. It sounds
I mean,
appealing.
we when we started Sway Group, we used that model. So we signed 25 mom bloggers and we took a percentage of whatever we negotiated for
Mhm.
them. And I always say it was a great way to launch the business, but the business model didn't make sense for us long term. There were issues with it. And one of the issues was we were responsible for all of the income coming into these people. And at the end of the day, we weren't going to have all the work for them. And
Mhm.
we didn't, we wanted them to be able to make as much money as possible.
Mhm.
The other issue is that when you are representing people and when you are responsible for putting food on their table, when a brand comes to you and asks you to make a recommendation of which influencer to work with, there might be a small piece of you that wants to recommend the person who hasn't had work in a couple of weeks versus the one who's actually a good fit but has been
Right.
making all the money
Yeah.
because you're not heartless and you don't want their
Yep.
kids to starve.
Right. It's
And
so true. There's that emotional piece
yeah,
right
yeah,
there.
and but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, none of this works if clients who are not a fit or have already covered a competing product or are just
Mhm.
not going to do the job that needs to be done. Like that's not sustainable for anyone.
Right. I think I've told you this story in planning for Nimbus. I heard
Which is,
so
let's just remind everyone,
oh, yeah.
that's Casey's
N-
conference that's coming to Chicago in April, where you should go sign up to attend.
Thank you so much. Yes, Nimbus, Influencer Innovation Conference. I talked to a lot of brands, and one of the topics that came up was talent management, hence why I've written about it, why we're talking about it today. To wit, one of my brand contacts said in one day, he received a pitch to work with an a creator from 3 different talent managers, all claiming to represent that person exclusively. Now that can't be right.
I have seen talk of this
Yeah,
on
and then on
LinkedIn.
the brand side, I've heard that the managers will pitch a brand deal to the creator side that they don't have. There's no relationship or no actual contract there. Now, that's the bad apples, right? When we talk about bad apples, that's and I don't even think in some cases, I know there's a lot of pitching going on because they know the manager of that creator. They know they can get to that creator. So there's a lot of wheeling and dealing, fine. What I found interesting is over the summer, talking to talent management agencies and even emailing them and saying, "Hey, I'm seeing this problem." There was very little recognition on the side of the talent agencies that this is going on and it's a problem. They're like, "No, no, we're fine."
How often do you think that pitching works?
What I think ends up happening is what you just described, where there are a few creators and influencers who are getting a lion's share of the work because they've got a dedicated person pitching them versus I don't know how I don't know. I'd have to look at it both ways because agencies that have really big rosters, how do they devote
They
time
can't be
to
out there
hundreds?
pitching.
Right.
I mean, my perspective is, and I'd love for someone to show me how I'm wrong here and what I'm not seeing, but the best influencer marketing happens when there's an authentic story to tell. So for a moving company, it's someone has a move coming up and they're going to use that moving company and showcase it. For our Ergo Baby client, it's someone is pregnant and uses their Belly Bandit product and then has the baby and uses Ergo Baby.
Yeah.
Like there has to be that kind of fit. At the same time, the
Uh-huh.
brand also has to have the budget available. If influencer marketing is being run through their agency, there likely has to be a campaign happening because there might not be an always on
Mhm.
initiative.
Right.
So not only does the agent have to take this influencer who has a story, let's say they have a move coming up, they
Mhm.
have to then find all the moving companies, identify which ones are spending on what, who still has budget available. Is this going to, like, there's just so
Mhm.
many pieces and parts that have to come together in an exactly perfect way. And
Right.
ultimately, that's a big piece of why we shifted our business model because that just felt so impossible.
Like riding a horse, shooting an arrow at an apple down a football field
Yeah.
and hoping to hit right dead center.
Yeah.
It's tough. Yeah. Interesting.
Deep thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. And I feel like we could keep talking forever about this. And it's not that I want to please everybody in this conversation. I know it seems like we've come out pretty strongly against talent management. I don't think it's going anywhere. So I think the benefit of these kinds of conversations is to fine tune and figure out. In fact, at Nimbus, I want the only panel I'm going to have right now is scheduled to be a no holds barred conversation about talent management and the questions that brands and agencies need to be asking talent managers before working together. Like, how can we
Yeah.
get smarter about vetting them and working with them and getting the best out of that relationship? What are we not, like you said, tell me what we're missing. Tell me what I can do to maximize that relationship versus feeling sort of resentful or that I'm going into it begrudgingly.
Right.
Yeah.
Lots to unpack. Okay, so
Yeah.
if anyone has any input on this, please share it
Yeah.
on our LinkedIn or wherever you can. We're everywhere, so I'm sure you can find a place to share it with us. We also, just to tease out next week, I think we would love to talk a little bit about the difference between celebrities and influencers since
Yeah.
that came up. So stay tuned for that
Yeah.
next week. And thanks
That'll
to
be a good
everyone for
one.
tuning in again.
Yeah. Thanks so much.